Hello and welcome to this STEM Glasgow CLPL session on health and safety in the primary classroom with a focus on STEM. My name is Hannah Christie and I'm the STEM Development Officer for Glasgow City Council, and I'll be taking you through this session. Along with myself, I have my colleague Alex McLaughlin, who you can see in the bottom right hand corner, who will be doing all of the background technical work. So Alex, if you want to take us on to the next slide. To take you through a wee bit about what the session is going to focus on, it'll be about 20 minutes and we're going to look a wee bit at the Glasgow City Council policy, risk assessments, PPE, a wee bit of information on the COVID-19 bubble approach, suitable equipment, parents and partners, guidance and support, and STEM the spread, which you might have already seen in your school. So first things first, when it comes to health and safety is always in place to protect us, and it really should be seen more as an asset and not a deterrent to be doing anything in the classroom. So to ensure good practice and successful learning, you really need to cover the following. Firstly, you always have to take care of your own health and safety. If you take care of that, everybody else should be covered. Secondly, take care of the health and safety of others who might be affected by the work that you're carrying out. And finally, cooperate with your employer's health and safety policy and protocols. Now, you can get access to the Glasgow Health and Safety Policy on Glasgow Online, but it's quite a large policy document, so you can actually find more broken down aspects of that in Glasgow Online in the Health and Safety tab on the left-hand side, but the policy is there for you to access at any point. So first, we're going to start with looking at risk assessments. Ultimately, risk assessments are the starting point for complying with all modern health and safety legislation, and that is really something that everybody should be familiar with and be comfortable filling out. So a generic risk assessment and blank performance can be found on Glasgow Online, as mentioned before, in the wee left-hand side tab under health and safety. If you need any support with filling out a risk assessment, then you are more than welcome to call the Education Services Health and Safety team, and the number is just at the bottom there. This session will mention risk assessments quite a few times. However, this is not specific training on how to fill out a risk assessment form. For support and guidance, as mentioned, please contact the Health and Safety team. When you're filling out a risk assessment, and by this point you should have a wee bit of an understanding about how to do that, really you have to be asking yourself 3 key questions. Firstly, what are you doing? Second, who is taking part? And lastly, what do you need? And really, if you're able to answer all 3 of these in your risk assessment, then you have covered everything that you need to cover. So have a wee think about the activity that you want to do, who will actually be involved, and that could be pupils, yourself, additional support staff, etc. And lastly, what's needed for that activity, and what is everything that you need to make sure that's successful. Next we're having a wee look at personal protection equipment, or PPE. Now, PPE, as I'm sure you all know, has been a major discussion point over the last year, but it's important to know when it's appropriate to use it during a lesson and actually how to care for it. So, firstly, it should be clearly stated that it's a requirement in your risk assessment. So if you need personal protection equipment, that should be in your risk assessment to start with. Let's have a wee look at some of the basic examples of PPE. So obviously in the news you'll have seen things about face masks and face shields and gloves and things, but probably more common PPE items found in a classroom can be seen in this list below. So we've got lab coat, apron, safety goggles, ear protection, gloves and a helmet. Now there are obviously way more PPE items in this, but these are just the kind of basics of it. So firstly, the cleaning of PPE. This should be carried out regularly and prior to and following use. So if you have an activity, maybe in a kitchen or in a classroom or in the lab or outside, then you should make sure that the equipment has been cleaned before and following use. And that means that it's suitable and appropriate for the next person to use when their time comes along. For some guidance on how to actually clean your personal protection equipment, that can be found on Glasgow Online. They actually have a guidance document on how to use the Milton solution and how that should be diluted. You should be doing that along with maybe a janitor or a technician in your school. Lastly, and this is quite important when it comes to PPE, you shouldn't overuse PPE. PPE should be used only when it's required. Maybe putting on too much PPE or overusing it can actually compromise the activity and put somebody at risk. So please make sure that you're only putting on and wearing PPE or using PPE when it's appropriate. Next slide, Alex, thank you. So PPE and COVID-19. So government COVID guidance regarding the return of schools to full capacity continues to be updated, and the same comes into place with PPE. We can't give you in this session concrete guidance on what you should be doing because this is changing sometimes on a day-to-day basis. So the best advice is to continually go back to Glasgow Online and check you have the most updated guidance on how to use and clean PPE in a classroom. So next, we're going to have a wee look at the COVID bubble and how you can actually use this. So when using equipment, pupils and teachers should use a bubble approach, and this is something that's been discussed loads, but not everybody actually understands how to implement this into a classroom or a lesson. So we'll just take you through the steps. Firstly, all suitable proposed equipment should be cleaned and sanitised before use. We've already covered that in the PPE section just before this. Secondly, where possible, pupils and staff are grouped together. This becomes their cohort bubble. Now what that means is that cohort bubble will stay together for the duration of the activity. This can be a group of 2 or 3 pupils and a member of staff, or in some cases it can be a whole class. But you have to make sure that once you have established that bubble and that group, and the staff are aware of that, that then they don't mix with other groups. All pupils and staff should wash or sanitise their hands before using an area. If you're inside, washing is always the number one with soap and hot water. Maybe if you're outside or in the playground, having anything to wash or sanitise your hands is suitable. Next, your cohort bubble should remain in the area they have been allocated until the end of the activity or the session. Then, pupils and staff should wash or sanitise their hands at the end before leaving the area. And lastly, the area should be cleaned and wiped down and sanitised before the next cohort can enter it. This means that no matter who is entering or leaving a space, hygiene is always the number one priority and it is ready for the next group to use. Next, Alex. Okay. So next we're going to have a wee look at some suitable and unsuitable equipment. When it comes to teaching STEM lessons or activities in the classroom, common questions are always around what can I actually use or what's allowed to be used in my classroom. And there can be some myths and things that can put people off. So we're going to have a wee look at the moment at some of the most common items found in a classroom and have a wee discussion, I suppose, about if they're allowed or if they're suitable. So we'll quickly go over some of the icons that you can see below. I've tried to gather the most common ones. Alex is going to highlight them as we go. We'll go from left to right. So firstly, you can see we've got a pair of scissors. Underneath that, we have a tea light. Underneath that, we have a common zinc battery. Moving on, we have a knife. We have underneath that a nut for screws and things. We then have underneath that a different type of nut. So food, peanuts, that kind of thing. Then at the bottom we have a button battery. We then have some bleach. A hairdryer. A screw. We then have some grains and pulses. Oh, no, next one, Alex, sorry. Next one down, grains and pulses. And a Stanley knife at the bottom. Then if you go up, we've got some flour. We then have a camping stove at the top there. To the right, a rechargeable battery. A candle underneath that, just a normal candle with an open flame. Underneath that we have some Play-Doh. And lastly we have some sand. So what I want you to do just now is I want you to pause the video and just take a moment or two and just take a sheet of paper or a page, divide it in two and have suitable on one side and unsuitable on the other. And now that you know what each of the icons are, just jot down what you think is a suitable piece of equipment to use in a primary classroom and what you think are unsuitable items to use. So just pause the video here and have a wee go of that. Right, we'll move on to the next one and we'll take a look at what actually are the rules around some of these items. So you can see here they've sort of been divided into 3 categories. I wasn't cheating when I asked you to divide it into 2 there. So what we have on the left hand side are all of the items which are suitable, and the language that you should be using for these in your risk assessment, which you'll know because you'll already have gone and asked the Education, Health and Safety team for a wee bit of guidance around that, is tolerable. What's a tolerable risk to use? So on the left here you can see we have the scissors, the nut, the screw, the tea light because it's a contained flame. We have a knife, a Stanley knife, a hairdryer. We have a normal nut. So nuts and pulses and things are in there, but we'll go for more information in a sec. We have a battery. We have some sand, some flour, and some Play-Doh. A moderate risk, which you can see in the middle column, and again that's the language you should be using. Something which is moderate risk is a button battery, and that's just because of the chance that somebody could swallow that, but we'll go over that in a wee second. Rechargeable batteries and the camping stove. And lastly, and you can see this is in the intolerable column, which is the bleach and the open flame. And the reason that they are in there as unsuitable and intolerable is because what you need to ask yourself when you're carrying out an activity is this the safest way I can do this? And if there's a safer way that you can do something, then you always choose the safest option. So for example, if you do need a flame, why would you choose a candle which is not contained when you could use a tea light? And again, bleach, you can get the same effects from any experiment you want to do using bleach with soap or another item along those lines. So you can have a wee look here. Oh, sorry, Alex, can we go back for a sec? So you might be thinking some of the items intolerable. For example, the Stanley knife, they're absolutely suitable. You just need to know for age and stage if that's appropriate. And it's the same with some of the smaller items. You might need some adult supervision. Again, with the nuts and the pulses and things, your school may have an individual policy on if you're allowed or not allowed to use them. But as a council and nationally, they're not actually banned. But again, you should always check before using nuts and pulses with your school. And then again, make sure if you've got any electronic items, they've been pat tested, for example, like the hairdryer there. Alex will give a wee bit more information now on batteries and some of the food items. So having a wee look at some of the food items, like I said, nuts, lentils and pulses, they can absolutely be used in school, but you need to check your own school policy. You might have someone that has a severe allergy and therefore they are banned no matter what. Tea lights can be used in schools, but if you are using tea lights or if you are using any kind of candles that are contained in a dish or something along those lines, they should be lit in a tray of sand. So you have to fill a tray of sand first, and the candle and the tea light should be sitting in the tray of sand, and then they should be lit there. And that's just another precaution you can take to ensure if it maybe gets tipped over or something that it just gets put out immediately. And it also should be in line with your establishment's fire risk assessment. So that will possibly mean a well ventilated area, somewhere that has suitable fire alarms and so on. So please check that before you use any kind of candle or flame. Next slide, Alex. So let's have a wee look at some more information around batteries. So you can see from earlier on, 3 batteries were highlighted. We have button batteries, rechargeable batteries, and just your everyday disposable zinc batteries. But not all of them are appropriate to use for every activity. So firstly, button batteries, which are commonly found in watches and maybe electronic thermometers and things, they absolutely can be used, but they need to be screwed into an appliance so they're not left loose or lying about, and this is to prevent the risk of ingestion. Secondly, we've got rechargeable batteries, and again these can be used in school, but they really should only be used in electronic appliances such as bbots and cameras. You shouldn't be using them for building circuits. This is because the continuous charge coming from a rechargeable battery can actually overpower the circuit and cause some of your bulbs to blow, or in some cases even melt the wires. So that can cause its own risk. And lastly, they really shouldn't be left on constant charge overnight or anything, because again that can be a fire risk. So please make sure that they are in an area where there will be a member of staff and that once they're fully charged, they're removed from the charging station. In most cases, as it says at the bottom there, zinc disposable batteries are advised. When you're disposing of the batteries, you really need to take the ends and take into a battery bin. That is the correct way to dispose of them to ensure that they don't leak. Next slide, Alex. So moving on, let's have a wee bit of a look at COVID-19 and some of the resources that you might be using. So as mentioned earlier on, when working in a cohort bubble, any equipment, PPE, areas and things should be sanitised and washed down when cohorts enter and leave. But there are some items that people are a wee bit unsure about. Well, how do I make sure they're clean, or how do I make sure they're sanitised? And probably the most common ones that come up are things like water and Play-Doh. So where possible, water and Play-Doh really should be replaced on a daily or sessional basis when cohorts change. However, at the beginning of term, it may be best if children have their own Ziploc bag with their allocated doughs or food or Play-Doh and so on, any malleable items that is theirs to keep, and therefore no other person will be touching it. And that means it kind of minimises the amount of resources that need to get constantly changed and thrown out and so on. For outdoor sandpits or mud kitchens, staff really need to clean the equipment before and after use, but obviously you don't need to go in with a scrub brush and scrub mud or sand, because that's not really possible. So just please make sure that any of the actual equipment and things are being wiped down and that cohorts are washing their hands before they enter. Again, as mentioned there, hands really should be washed and sanitised, entering and exiting an area. And really the main considerations should always be about social distancing, cleaning of equipment and hygiene of the people using it. For any other information on how to adhere to these guidelines, please refer to the guidance on the Protect, Play in Primary School, which is in Glasgow Online Health and Safety section. Alex, the next slide. Parent and partner workshops. Now these are things that were really popular obviously before COVID-19. They're probably not as accessible just now, but we'll still go over them because, especially when it comes to careers weeks, British Science Week and things, schools are really keen to have other people coming in and doing maybe workshops. So before you invite parents or partners in to run workshops for STEM week or for other weeks that you've got on, you really need to cover a few competency questions with parents and partners first. So firstly, you need to establish, and please have this in writing, what are they delivering? What equipment are you using? Importantly, are they actually qualified to be carrying out the activity? What are the risks, and are they providing a risk assessment of their own? Now, you should be writing your own risk assessment for this, and really the answers for all the questions above should be included in the Glasgow City Council risk assessment. Now, current COVID guidelines obviously is that only essential external visitors to schools are advised. So at the moment, you really shouldn't be running any parent or partner workshops, and instead you might be having something over Teams or a virtual meeting. But when you do actually invite parents and partners, and when that's allowed back into school, please ensure that you ask them the questions above and that you make sure this is included in your own risk assessment. Alex? So more or less, we've almost come to the end here, but having a wee bit of a further look at health and safety support, your first port of call if you're a Glasgow City Council practitioner should always be the Education Services Health and Safety team. They are regularly updating advice and guidance relating to COVID-19, and they also have sector-specific risk assessments and other documentation that you might want to dip in and out of to ensure that everything is in place for running various activities in your classroom. All of this can be found on the Glasgow Online page, and if you look on the left-hand side of Glasgow Online, you'll actually see the Health and Safety tab. By going in there, you can get up-to-date guidance for early years, primary and secondary, and also subject-specific, as well as some of the pro formas and the risk assessments mentioned earlier on in this session. You can find additional support for health and safety, including some other CLPL and things run by CERC, which is the Scottish Schools Education Research Centre. And they actually release their own health and safety guidance for the return of schools coming back for COVID-19 for primary and secondary. But really this has to be used in addition to the Glasgow City Council guidance. Glasgow City Council guidance should always be your first port of call. Lastly, Stem the spread. You may have seen some of these posters around your school or around your establishment over the past few weeks. Stem the spread is a series of posters that can be used as additional signage to complement existing signage in schools, and really they highlight the keep safe messages that really should be shared widely both in your classroom and across the school. So they are: wash your hands, catch your cough or your sneeze, don't touch your face, and keep your distance. The PDF poster pack is also available to download from Glasgow Online, and it comes with further posters and copies of the icons if you want to use them on anything else in school. The posters are also available in Gaelic. And lastly, just to summarise, so we've taken you through the kind of basics of health and safety and running STEM activities in your classroom there. So again, firstly, Glasgow Health and Safety Policy is available on Glasgow Online. You can go and have a look at that. Please ensure that you are knowledgeable enough to fill out your own risk assessment, and if you need any support with that, contact the health and safety team. PPE should be used as and when needed, but please don't overuse PPE as it can put people at risk. The bubble approach should be in full effect in your school, and if you need any more advice on that, you can either contact the health and safety team, or you can look back on this video just as a wee reminder. Suitable equipment, so we've gone through everything, and the language needed, which is tolerable, moderate and intolerable. So please make sure that's the language you use in your risk assessment. Parents and partners should be providing information before they attend the school to run workshops, but that should all be included in your own risk assessment. And for more guidance and support, please always contact the Education Services Health and Safety team at Glasgow Online. Lastly, just a contact page for us. If you don't already, please follow us on Twitter at STEM Glasgow. You can email us if you'd like to get in contact, stem@glasgow.gov.uk. We also have an e-bulletin that goes out every 2 weeks that you can sign up to on our website, or you can visit our YouTube channel, which you've already found because this is where you're watching it. And you can find more CLPL videos on this channel along with additional resources. Thank you so much for taking part in this CLPL, and we hope to see you at future sessions.